got my big boy crew up here today. I got Kai with me. And we're cruising the tall timber, but we're in a whole brand new zone today. I don't come down this way much. I'm on the south end over on the west side. And we hiked all along that south facing side there on some old logging roads. And then we took a really old one up to here. This thing hasn't been used in a long time. These are big timber in here. And they haven't been up here for 100 years. And so we're having a good hike here. And back there we were in there's a heavy cedar draw that goes all down that way, and one right behind me. You can see all the cedar here. Both these draws come down and meet down there, and when we came through there, both these guys were pretty lit up, and I had to snap him on the lead, and then we go just a little bit further where it had rained, and in the mud we could see the new tracks. There's a moose hanging in there, and they'd have been barking that. So these are hunters, these two, but I can keep them organized. But I wanted to start a bit of a new series today, and I wanted to touch briefly on some concepts that I would do if I was starting over and I wasn't a breeder and I was just looking for a new dog, what I would do. And I'm going to do it in 3 parts. And my first series is going to be on if I was moving to a little acreage and I didn't have a lot of worry about two-legged predators. I was more worried about just, keeping the yard safe from wildlife, stuff like that. Doing some nice hikes and having good dogs to go hiking with. And just having a couple family dogs and just having a nice time. I would, in most cases, I would select a Norwegian male and a Jamthun female. And that's the two I would run with. After running 2 dogs so often, and almost always 2 dogs, that would be my very first choice if I didn't have to worry about two-legged predators. And they would handle most of the two-legged anyway, the big Jamthun female and the male. And then I wouldn't be socializing them that much. I'd stay away from that. But get a male like this and a female like Ayla, and that would be the best option. 2 dogs live longer. I would always recommend 2 dogs to anybody. 2 dogs will be happier, healthier, they'll do better. The male, he can play hard with them females. He can play hard, and they can handle him. The smaller Norwegians, the male always wins, but the male always wins in the end with the Swedish too, but he can play way harder. And that would be a really, really good combo. Now, the odds of getting those combos are slim, 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 right? But because I have a Rella bred and Sage and Aspen at the same breeder, those 2 dogs could be selected. And a person could get a female Jamthun and a male Norwegian. It would be a piece of cake. Now, I would set it up so I had a nice run for the dogs, and I would have 6-foot fences. I'd have it double wired. I'd have the first set on the inside. I'd dig it down about 6 inches, put a rail there. I'd just wrap that wire around that rail, tack it on. Then I would just cover that rail on the inside the pen, and on the outside the pen I would just run the 6-foot wire down to the ground, staple it down. That's that. I would have it double so that they can't go through it, and get that 2x4 square wire 6 feet high, some treated posts, put a nice shelter in there, be good to go. Now, I wouldn't leave them in there at night. I would have a 6-foot chain link right around the house, and so that there's no access to the house unless they go through the chain link. And I would set that up with a real good sleeping kennel in there, and every night I'd put them 2 dogs in that pen. And then you could just sleep soundly because nobody can get into the access to the house without first going through the dogs. and you put a Jamton female in there with a big male, they're not coming in. And so that's the way I would rig my yard up. I don't think I would worry about fencing the whole property. Wouldn't worry about it if they're out and about with you. They're out, otherwise they're in the run pen. And then I would just put a steel gate across the driveway, stop cars way out. That would be the ideal for me. And it would have shade and stuff in that run pen, preferably a treed area where they can dig and do their thing. And that's the way I'd work that. Now, it's a pretty sure bet I would leave them both intact, but at some point potentially you could spay the female if it was getting to be troublesome for you, but I would probably just, you know, with the two pens you can manage a heat cycle easy. Just have the male staying in the one pen and have the female in the run, or vice versa, and hiking with the male predominantly when the heat cycle's on, and let the female stay, or you can do some work with her too. But that's only twice a year, so it's not a big deal. It's not hard to manage, and then you got no issues. The nice thing about having two dogs from the same breeder in the same yard and selected at the same time, especially because the litters are coming within a few days of each other, the dogs are already bonded. They'll be running together, and I would simply take those dogs right at that point, and I would immediately go to the bush like this, and I do all my off-leash work with them both. At the same time, I do off-leash first, and I just head straight for the timber with 8-week-old dogs, just straight up. And I would not do any leash work until they were really good up here off leash, and then you could do some leash work if you wanted. But predominantly for me, I would go straight to the bushes many times as I could when they're small, just as often as possible, and get them on off leash. And that's the way I would work that first scenario. Now that scenario is really good for kids and families, because both those dogs are ideal for families. They're good for couples too, because you've got two really incredible dogs for couples. That works for a single person. It works for a man or a woman. That option is really great in all areas. And because those two dogs live about the same age, they have about the same health aspects, and they'll get along so well for so many years. That's a trouble-free set of dogs. And if you can raise a few chickens and have a couple turkeys in the yard, maybe a little sow with a few weanlings you can raise up, you can feed them easy. They don't eat much. And it would be a piece of cake to manage those dogs if you had a little acreage. And that would be the perfect scenario for just about anybody. Obviously, I'll talk about the scenario of two Elkhounds, a male and a female Elkhound, and I'll talk about the scenario of the Jamton male and female. But the main thing about having that Jamton female is she can play rough. Kai. Now, if you get a bigger Norwegian female, it works out pretty good too. You can have a pretty good setup there. But for me, if I was starting over, that's the way I would do it. Now, it's a rare day that you get that opportunity to have both. And so the reason I'm doing this series now is because of that opportunity. We have two of the Jamtons bred, so Paso and Arella, and Arc and Varela. And then we've got all kinds of Norwegian dogs bred, so that those combinations are truly doable. And tomorrow I'll do another combination on the other option, but in terms of running two dogs, I'm a big fan of two dogs, and I'm a big fan of taking them both at the same time and running them together, and then doing the off-leash simultaneously with both. And I'll tell you what, you get some really, really good dogs. And that's the way I would do her. And then for a fact, that's the way I would fence too. I would have a much smaller enclosure at night, but it would encircle the entire building. And you would have to enter through a gate to get into the house, and that means you have to come through these guys. And that's the way I would rig that up. Now, for those of you with a lot of equipment and a lot of stuff that you want to look after, all of that, well, fencing might have to be adjusted, but if really and truly what you're worried about is just the access to the house at night, that's the way I would do her. And then I wouldn't overly socialize. In fact, probably not at all. I do believe in all my time the very best dogs I had were the ones that I socialized the least. And yeah, I've had to socialize a lot for visiting people. But the versatility of the Norwegians is so good that you're such a good boy. You're such a good boy. Kuro, he loves me so much, I'll tell you, and I love him. He's a good boy. Jesus, he's a good fella. Let's see if we can turn so they can see you. You just come over here. Yeah, then they can look at you, eh? Yeah, such a magnificent head on this guy. Yeah. He's blowing his fall coat, as you can tell. I had brushed him before we left, but he's starting to cover me up. One of you guys has the dog that chewed my hat. Somebody out there's got that pup. I'm not sure if it was Karuz or Kai's. Might have been Mons, might have been Leafs. But somebody, I found my hat today and I'm looking and thinking, oh my goodness, what's going on? Somebody chewing that baby. Yeah, here, jump up here. Yeah, come on up. Good. That's my magnificent fella. Yeah, you can get such a bond with this lineage. This was selected by the master breeders out of Finland for bonding. They knew I wanted bonding lines, and they knew I wanted the best they had. And they really picked the dog. I tell you, he's so good. He's an absolute dream. This is one of the most important males in Canadian Elkhound history for a very long time, because he brings that bloodline in that has never been here before. This is the first time this bloodline's ever been in North America. Now we have Aspen bred to him, and we have Sage bred to him. And we have his daughter, Kaliva, down there with pups, and his daughter, Rita, with pups. So this particular genetic you can get right now. And then we've got the big Jamthans that he came over with. So Arella and Paso came on the same flight with him. And Satu brought all three. And so his buddies are all having pups at the same time. It's pretty unique as a breeder that Varella's having a litter, Karu's having pups, and Paso. They're all three came on the same flight years ago, and here they are all putting genetics into the pool. And not to take away from the fact that Karu's daughter, Kaliva, and Karu's daughter, Rita, have pups on the ground, and Korea just delivered a pup to a family not long ago, and that was Carbon. And then, of course, what's really unique about this whole thing is that Varela, her daughter is Arella. And so Arella is bred to Paso. So that's just how fantastic this whole time frame is with these pups that are coming. And the Finnish help that we've got, all the Finnish breeders and all the help we've got. And of course, we're talking the help from Paul in Sweden as well. Satu and Paul are both exceptional individuals over there. And Paul is from Sweden, and he's the one that brought Swix over roughly about the same time. And we ended up, we have that litter out of Swix that's whose Aspen's father is. And so it's very, very cool that all this is going on with imports. And then, if the truth be told, Pretty Boy Leaf, I imported him, and he's the father of those two litters down south. The daughters of Carew, we made it to Pretty Boy Leaf, and he was an import. And then the beautiful Silver Nova, we imported her, and she's, of course, the mother to Kaliva. And we're talking Kai and Tika are full sibling sisters, and of course their father was Bram, first generation in Canada. And so we have all of this interaction going on, and Sage just happens to be a daughter of Pretty Boy Leaf too. So it's like every single pup is really, really influenced by our top dogs. And then they almost all stem back to Old Dakota Man and Bram and Tora and Mia and that whole group, and Tika and Kai and all of them, Silver Nova and everything. So it's a really fascinating time. And then Ark just happens to be the first Gemthun male born in Canada, and he's having that litter with Varela again, and that's his daughter Arella. So, I mean, you just can't make this stuff up. It's wild. But yeah, I'll do a little more on my series with a male and a female, 2-dog series or 2 males, but predominantly my first choice if I had to resettle, if I didn't have any worries in my mind at all about 2-legged predators, well, that's the way I'd go. And then the next video I'll talk about other options. Kai, come. Kai, come say hi. We'll wrap up. Come on, Kai. Hustle. Girl, come on. Good. There's my beautiful girl. There's my beautiful girl. Good. All right, crew. Let's wrap this baby up. Eh? Let's wrap this up, crew. Let me get up here, crew. Good boy. Let me get up here, crew. That Kai, she's a show dog. Wow.